Hey everyone, my name is Matt. I'm with Cast Perimeter Lighting. Today we're at Gaston Fence in Charlotte, North Carolina, installing a Gen 2 system. It's a 500-foot run from the start of that gate to the end of that gate going into their entrance. This is going to be a real simple install. Just want to show how easy it is to retroactively add low voltage lighting to an existing fence line. Now, at Cast Lighting, we provide you with your own layout for each site. So we do the full material takeoff as well as the design engineer for you. So once you get on site, all you have to do is follow the diagram. It's that simple. But first things first, right now we're going to do our site layout, which means marking the excavation lines. So we're only going to have to do about a 6-inch slit trench with low voltage cabling. You don't have to go down as deep as high voltage. You don't have to be 18 inches into grade. It's making things just a lot easier on everybody. And then for the rest of the cable, it's just going to be daisy chained and mounted directly onto the fence. So much simpler install. Again, that's what makes the low voltage lighting so easy and simple. It's just less restrictions, less requirement, and much more accessible. All right, so when marking excavation lines, I like to keep 2 of these little weed pullers. They work as a great probe, so you can, number 1, hold your tape measure, but number 2, you can kind of get a feel for the type of grade you're working with. You know, this is going to be stony, but still soft soil, so we can trench through here as deep as we need to. Looks like we go into soft clay after just a couple inches. Right, just want to tighten it up as much as we can. And I'm just going to put a white chalk mark every 6 foot or so.
Rain.
And there we go, this is marked for excavation. When one guys come out here, they'll see this and they can let us know if there's anything really crazy we don't want to dig into before we start our trench. But that's all the digging we're gonna have to do for this entire 500-foot project. Okay, so after you get all your excavation lines marked, the next step is actually conducting your site layout. So we provide for you exactly what your spacing is to be or what we recommend for each luminaire. The CPL2 system is designed to be mounted every 16 to 24 foot with optimized spacing. So now in the United States, the majority of your post spacing is between 8 and 10 feet. So that could mean every other or every third post depending on where you are and what the site specification is. Now with the CPL2 system, at 500 lumens of output, 4:1 min to max ratio, it's going to have a perfectly even light coverage at that 16 to 24 foot spacing. And that's what we're going to verify before we start mounting fixtures. So what we're going to do now is just number all the posts and mark them with a colorful masking tape. I like to use numbers to mark everything because that way when we have other people on site, we can say, hey, you take odds, I take evens, and it allows us to dissipate the work and separate it a little more efficiently. So now we're going to take the layout, we're going to look at where the first luminaire is on the run, and that's right here at the edge of that fence, right where it bends. So we're going to mark that with a piece of tape saying number 1. I like to bend back the tape because this is a temporary marking system and you don't want to have to peel every piece off at the end, and with weather events and everything, it can make the tape stick to the fence a little harder. So just put a big 1 right there. So now all I'm doing is just verifying our post spacing. So this is an 8-foot post. And according to our layout, we're to mount at 16 foot for these. So that's going to be every other post. However, with the CPL2 system, you can still do every third post at 24 foot and still have even lighting. But if you want more light, simply add more lights, and that's what we're doing today. So we're doing 16-foot spacing, so that means 8 foot, 16 foot. This is going to be luminaire number 2. Now, anytime the fence changes and you move from a different style, it's important to re-verify your spacing. Now, often you're just going to do every other post, so it doesn't really matter, but everything matters, and you should know exactly what your spacing is, just so you can tell the customer what to expect, and also to make sure you're meeting the specifications to the site design. So if you'll notice here, we actually increased from 8 foot to 10 foot. Now, what's cool about the CPL2 system is we're still gonna have even coverage at every other post, just like the fence back there. So it just shows the versatility and adaptability of the cast perimeter fence lighting system. So for the last luminaires, this is where you want to pay attention to your site plan, because often at a gate, to prevent the need for trenching, we have more powerful luminaires. Instead of a 500 lumen output CPL2, we're going to put a 2000 plus luminaire output CPL 316. This luminaire is much more powerful, but it dissipates light at the same ratio, which means you're going to have even security camera calibration as far as the dynamic range of lighting. And it's going to give us enough light to cover this entire entrance area without having to cut through or bore underneath any of this asphalt. If we're using high voltage, you're going to have to cut through it, and it's going to be a much more expensive project. So you want to take the time to mark on your layout when the luminaires change. And you're also going to want to measure the post it's going on to if it's different than the standard one, so you know to bring the right equipment when you're coming out here with the luminaires.
Now.
And now, when we hit the end of the run, I'm going to mark that with an X. And we're just going to verify the layout as we go. And on this layout, where there is a spot for a junction box, where we're actually going to have to divert a little bit, and that can get kind of interesting, and we'll show you how we do that. What we're doing with this run, we want to have this go in 2 directions. So we want to continue the run going all the way to the end, but we also want to put a couple lights on this bend. So instead of running 2 cables from the power supply, because it's such a low voltage, low power system, we can actually put it all on the same circuit. So what we're going to end up doing is putting the junction box somewhere where it's inaccessible. So not here, but maybe one post in. And then we're just going to double back with the wire and split it. And we're going to have 1, 2 lights to complete the run on the interior, while the rest go on that run. And we still have plenty of load left on the power supply. Just to put it in perspective, one power supply can operate 40 luminaires per circuit with the CPL2s on a single strand of wire. If you want to use other running wire to complete it, you can actually do 55 luminaires per circuit for 110 luminaires on the run. And that is with a fully loaded power supply. It's not even going to pull 12 amps off your primary. So you're lighting up. You can light up 700 meters if you space it properly off of just one power supply, off of one breaker, one power plug. You can light a whole airfield if you wanted to. So this isn't even going to take up, with all the lights that we're going to be able to do, it's not even going to take up full capacity of just one circuit. So just to show you how low powered this is, and once you see the lights turn on at night, you'll really be amazed at how far we've progressed with our LED technology and how bright the lights are with considering how low the power consumption is. So now we have the complete site layout completed. We just got to put our junction box location on the interior post, but we can't jump over the fence, so we got to drive around. After we have that marked, we're going to start prepping the equipment for installation. Okay, so we finished marking our excavation lines. We finished marking our posts, verified our spacing. We have our total luminaire count. So the next thing we're going to want to do is prep our luminaires to be mounted. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. So the CPL2s come 4 to a box. These are the beautiful black painted versions. And now in order to prepare these luminaires, what you're going to want to do is just basically remove everything. So it's going to come with the mounting plate on the back. Just go ahead and remove that. You're going to want to pull the junction box off. You're going to pull the bottom plate off. All you need to do that is a flathead screwdriver. And some of our customers actually choose to replace this screw with a Torx 8 security screw, just to further the tamper resistance. You can absolutely do that as well. It's a common thread, common tapping, so you can put a more security resistant junction box screw in there if you so choose. You want to pop the quick connect off of this. So this is how we're actually going to connect the luminaires to the line main, to the main wire with these quick connects. So remove this, put it in the bottom of the junction box, and just save it for later. Now we're going to want to remove all 4 of these screws, these Phillips head screws. So the first one, so now this mounting plate comes off. Now this mounting plate is what we call our flat post or I-beam mounting plate. These screw holes actually line up perfectly with a lot of Ameristar Impasse series I-beam fence posts. It also will work on a flat wall. You can think of like a wooden fence post, or if you have a really large bollard, such as like a 6 to 8 inch metal post, square post, you can just use self-tapping screws and screw this in directly onto that. So this is one of our various styles of mounting plates. However, today what we're going to be using these are our standard. These actually come with all of our Gen 2 luminaires in the box. These are 4 1/4 inch outside diameter banded mounting bracket. So unlike the flat post mounting bracket, this one here allows you to just basically put it onto a fence post. Anything that has a 4 1/2 inch outside diameter will work. And today what's interesting about this is designed for round posts. However, we're going to be able to use these on a 2 1/2 inch square post as well. And the cool benefit to having this, these bands here help a lot when it comes to running wire. So you can loop the wire around it as you're running it to keep it tense, and you have pretty much the exact amount you'll need for connecting the luminaire. It's also clippable, so in the event you need to pull everything down in like a rapid deployment, you have that option, and you don't have to damage any of your existing infrastructure. So this is an excellent mounting piece. It's by far our most used, and it's what we're going to be using today. This is a black painted version. Now you can paint all of our material if you like. You can just use the Rust-Oleum basic metal paint. Any metal paint will work, and it'll adhere fine to any of our products. I would recommend, if you do paint these, to keep these screws in. That way you're not messing up the threading. But that's how you prep the luminaire. Just remove everything off of it, get your mounting brackets set, and now we're going to start prepping our quick connects. Okay, so for each luminaire, you can put all the equipment just right inside the back of the junction plate. So this just keeps everything accountable. So you got everything you need to mount the fixture right here. Next thing you're gonna have to do after you remove all the equipment is you're gonna want to pull off the pre-stripped portion of the quick connects. And it's important to fray this. It comes soldered, so it keeps all the wires together. That prevents damage in shipping and handling. But what you're going to want to do to prepare these Inside your box, you have these quick connects. These are a posi-tap quick connectors. These allow you to splice the luminaires onto the main wire without having to do a hard wire connection, which you could potentially damage the main line. We find that most of the failure modes in most applications of the system, because of how long these runs can be, you know, you're talking hundreds of luminaires on some of these sites. The splice from the luminaire to the main wire are where most of your issues occur. I mean, you can consider every time you strip that wire, if you remove any of the strands, you're causing unnecessary voltage loss in the system, and that can have luminaires perform out of specification and cause unnecessary voltage loss within your system. So this is not only faster and easier, but it prevents the issue of damaging the wire on a hard wire splice or using wire nuts. This is my preferred method of splicing just about any low voltage cable. You can stick these inside the junction box after you're done, and you're not going to have any issue with it. In order to prepare these and put these into the quick connect, all we're going to do is open this up. This top portion here is going to be screwed into posi-tap. But like I said, because this is soldered, when you put that collar around, the wires are unable to fray when you put it onto that node. So what you need to do is clip off just a portion of this. So now you can have this wire, you see how that can fray around the node? You simply stick it in as far as it'll go, and you're just gonna screw down, and that's gonna tighten and fray this wire around the node on here. Sometimes you might have to restrip the wire to do this, but it's important that it frays, because if it doesn't fray and you keep that wire on there, it's likely the connection's gonna come undone, because if the wire doesn't fray, this won't screw down properly. You'll end up cross-threading it, and then over time it'll work its way out. The posi-tap connector also has two different bottom components to it. This yellow one here is for 14 gauge wire and below. This is for 12 and 10 gauge wire. So that's what we're going to be using today. We're using 10 gauge wire for this system. So we're going to go ahead and put them into the bottom of this. And set it aside. All right, so after all the luminaires are prepped, I like to put them all into its own separate box. Luminaires in one box, and then all the components in the other box, including the quick connects. And then we're gonna start mounting our mounting brackets. So best thing to do to prepare for that is putting the two bottom mounting screws on before you mount it. And then just go around. I like having a good lineman pouch and just start putting them on. All right, so depending on your situation, you might have to put this back band on if it's like barbed, or if you wanna make life a little bit easier on yourself and you can access the top of it, then you can just prep it. All you need for this is a 1/2 inch ratcheting wrench. That's gonna save you a lot of time. You're gonna be really grateful for that tool. Prep it as much as you can. Now you'll have to remove this a little later, but just to have it there, just hand tighten it. You can hand tighten all these. You just want to have them on there for later. Then take your 1/2 inch ratcheting bit, and we're just gonna tighten it, kind of like how you tighten a car tire, where you do each side interchangeably so one doesn't get tighter than the other. Just do that. Wow. And there you go, that's going nowhere. And as you can see, there's a little bit of room, but it's no issue at all. This is on there, very tight. So the 4-inch mounting bracket will work on other posts aside from just your typical round post. So it's good to know. So if you have a fence like this, a beautiful square aluminum or steel fence, we got you covered on that as well. So part of the process, we just have to keep going along. All right, so now we have all of our mounting brackets set. We got to use the same one for this entire fence line, both the round and square brackets. So this is what you should be left with after step 2, mounting all this. You should have all 3 of these screws in there. You need to now mount the luminaire to the bracket. So you're going to unscrew the set screw. The set screw is the center screw here. That's what's going to set the luminaire on the bracket. You're going to line up these 2 ridges on these 2 bottom screws. That's going to hold it in place. Get it started. Screw it about 90% of the way, and you have a little bit of give left and right with these screws, and just make sure that your luminaire is straight. There you go, that looks perfect. Okay. So after you're happy with it set, and now I like to just use, because fences typically, they're all plumb and level, but they follow a lot of different terrain features. So I like to use the post as my reference for straight up and down, and I don't use a plumb gauge, simply because if I make the luminaire plumb and the post isn't plumb, then it'll look off. So I just want to make sure it's straight to the post. So sometimes you come across a post that's just a little too wide to want to use a 4-inch mounting bracket. So we got you covered. So one of the most critical components to our system is the tin-coated no oxidizing wire we utilize. This is marine grade wire that, in conjunction with our PosiTap quick connectors, it makes for a watertight, corrosion-free connection. You can screw directly into this, and even if water gets in, it's not going to corrode. You have a tin-coated stranded wire, so it's going to be easy to work with. It's direct exposure, direct burial rated. A lot of people just mount this directly on the fence, and that's all we're going to do today. Now, when pulling wire, you want to pull it starting from your first junction box on the run. That could either be your power supply or the first place where you're going to make a wire split. So that's where we're going to start pulling it from today. So we're just going to walk this down about 400 foot in that direction. Another cool feature of our wire is it actually marks in feet how much you use, so we can verify our run distance at the end of the run at the junction box. But here, once you get to the last luminaire, takeoff. Go ahead and make a loop on this. And now as we start connecting, we can tighten the wire and pull the slack out of it. This just gives us an anchor point so we can start to do that. And when we make the connections, we'll start with this guy also. And that's how easy it is to run the wire. All right, so after you run all your cable, what you're gonna wanna do next before making the connection is at least have these bottom plates on, and you can start removing the stainless steel brackets. This is gonna make sure the junction box cover plate fits. It's also gonna make sure that as you make these connections, if you start to make the connection before tightening the wire, then there's a good chance that as you tighten the wire, all your connections are gonna be pulled to the left or pulled in the direction of your junction box. So it's best to put your bottom plates on all at once, trim all these all at once, and then go ahead and make the connection, tighten the wire, and put the junction boxes on. That way you're not over tightening the wire and putting yourself in a situation where you have to redo the work. So this is the best method. Your order of work is gonna be run your cable, connect your first luminaire, start putting tension into the wire, and then just go ahead, and if you wanna start installing the bottom plates and cutting this, then connect the rest. That way everything's gonna be nice and smooth sailing. You won't have to redo any work. You're not gonna run into a situation where you're pulling all your connectors to towards your junction box. It's just a simple one after another, one after another, one after another. So it's gonna show you there's a lot of different ways to cut these. This is stainless steel, so steel, obviously very tough, durable metal, excellent for being a mounting bracket. But when it comes to trimming this, you got a lot of different options. Some folks prefer to use angle grinders with a steel cutting bit. You could use a Sawzall with a metal cutting bit. I like this method. This is it's easy just to buy new bits for a Sawzall also, so very cost effective, simple way to do it. And you can also cut it about halfway, then pull it off, so you don't have to use, like with bolt cutters, when you pop it, you can send the bolt flying in a different direction, and that's not that much fun to do. So this is my preferred way of doing it. You'll see here, set the teeth right into a groove. It just has to be somewhere behind where the junction box would go. Put this right at the base of your junction box on the luminaire. That way, once you cut halfway, you don't have to worry about the teeth hitting the junction box. And there you go. Now it's ready to put the cover plate on and make the connection. Okay, so now that we have the first luminaire set up, as we work our way down the line, it's important that we have all the wire we need and we're not putting too much tension on it where we can't make our connections. So this is an excellent technique in doing that, where basically as you're tightening the wire at each luminaire, you're gonna go underneath, put your loop in. That's why it's important to have your bottom plate on it so you can actually see where the loop's gonna go into it and hold it, follow that loop up, and try to get these two zip ties pretty close together, like about within 6 inches, depending on where the luminaire is sitting. That's gonna make sure you have all the room you need to make your connection. But down the road, if you have to service this luminaire, if you clip these two zip ties, you got a good 24 inches to work with. So now we know we got the cable we need, it's all set. We're gonna go ahead and make our connection. So every time I do one of these, I am just so grateful that we don't have to use a whole bunch of wire nuts, because that would mean I'd have to cut this wire, I'd have to cut this wire, I'd have to strip both of them, then I'd have to make a twisted connection, and then there's a chance that as we're tightening and adding tension to the wire, those wire nuts can come undone. And you know, it's not always very easy to find out where the bad connection is. So this system here just makes life super easy. You're gonna do one at a time. It's important to do the quick connector onto the wire main prior to making the connection. That's gonna allow these bullet connectors to rotate, and it's gonna prevent any kind of damage due to over twisting the wire. As you can see here, is I just moved this that wire can rotate freely, that bullet connector spins with it, so I'm not damaging the wire as I make this connection. You can go either way if you have to go back into it. And really the only thing you have to pay attention to is not to cross thread this connection. That's the only way you can mess it up. It's easy to detect, so just take a quick look, inspect it, go ahead and make your connection. Stuff the junction box, so put the loop in there, just stuff it in. As neat as you can. Make sure the wires lay flat. There it is. And now all you need to do is add your cover plate. And there you go. This luminaire is all set. All right, so now we're going to show you how to install one of these junction boxes. These are really cool because it helps you split the run if you need to, such as the scenario we're in right now where we're kicking some lights to the left and then our main line's going all the way down about 400 feet. And we have a luminaire we also have to connect. So what this junction box does is it takes your load wire or your main wire coming off the power supply, and it gives you an easy way to split it without having to do a wire splice in a consolidated area where you can add on to it or modify it if you need to. So with this here, although we are on DC current and there is no polarity, it's important just to follow professional low voltage lighting rules, or more or less custom traditions, if you will. And we're gonna keep the writing on the right. So all of our writing, and what I mean by that is one of these strands of this 10-2 wire has writing on it. So we just use that, we keep those together, and we keep the non-writing together. And what this does is split it one into the light and then splits the run in both directions we need. Now these terminal blocks are oversized. We do that just to make everyone's life a lot easier. In order to install the wire into it, all you're gonna do is strip the wire. So give yourself a lot of room to work with. I mean, about a 1/2 inch like that will work for sure. Tighten both of these blocks, make sure it's on the DIN rail. There you go. That's one. And this is two. Now this is a really easy connection to make. I'd say the most common issue some installers make is they don't give themselves enough stripped cable to work with. And what they end up doing, because you're looking up at the connection, you don't see where the wire is all the time. That's why it's important to give yourself enough to work with. If you stick just the insulation into the teeth, it doesn't always allow the wires to connect to these terminal blocks, and it can cause a short issue, or it can just cause a bad connection. So just make sure it sits securely and you give yourself enough wire. But that's it. Just gotta put the cover plate on this thing, and we got ourselves an installed junction box. This is our CPT 1200 DCAI series power supply. This is a astronomical input. That's what the AI stands for. The astronomical meaning it uses an astronomical clock and a GPS antenna to determine where it is in the world. And it's gonna automatically update every single day what the dusk to dawn time is. So this power supply knows what the sun is doing. So it's a truly set and forget system. The first thing you have to do, however, is allow this power supply to pick up on that GPS pass and give it the ability to program itself. And all you have to do that is plug it in. You're gonna see a red LED flashing with EEE. Oh, and there you go. Once it turns green, that means the power supply is programmed. Now you have two primary functions for this power supply. On the bottom right of this switch, you have run auto. That's your automatic dusk to dawn setting. So you can set it onto that. And it's going to tell you here in hours how long it's going to take until the lights turn on. Now they don't use a timer because that's going to mess up daylight savings. You don't have to make a daylight savings adjustment. This goes off of the sun. It doesn't matter what your watch is saying. So 7 hours from now, it's going to turn the lights on. And if you come and check the clock or this power supply later while the lights are on, it's going to have a countdown timer for when the lights are going to turn off. So that's your automated feature. We could just set this and walk away. As you can see, it updated to the minute. So now 6 hours and 59 minutes until this power supply turns on. So after your power supply is picked up, its GPS is already programmed to operate on the run auto if that's a feature you so choose to use. The run manual, this is just your integration feature, so you can tie in via dry contacts on both circuits your security equipment. So think of motion sensors, web relays, really anything that offers a normally open or normally closed signal, anything that fires that signal, this power supply can receive it. There's also a power supply failure where this will fire a signal in the event that the primary power goes out. So we really have thought of just about everything for the security integrator to make this as high of a level of security power supply as you want it to be for your security posture. Now, whether you're going to operate this power supply on run auto or run manual, it's very likely you're going to need to check the system during the daytime. So how do you manually turn the power supply on? Well, first off, put power to the circuit. So circuit 1, circuit 2. For this power supply or this system, we're only doing about 30 luminaires and we only need one circuit, one 600 watt circuit. So we're going to turn circuit 1 on. And now you can do this on either run auto or run manual. If you take a little jumper cable, all you have to do is touch the voltage plus or the common tap and the manual on, and this light will turn blue, meaning your system is on. You also have to remember, after you do all your checks and tests, to turn it back off. So now the system's on and we can do our voltage checks. The first one we're going to do is right here at the power supply. And we're going to measure the total load this power supply is using. We do this by taking our multimeter and first confirming the DC voltage. This is important because most multimeters, especially the value ones, don't read DC current. They only read AC current. So you need to change it to DC. This is a DC power supply. You can just stick it right on these. And you should be reading 32.4 over 30 volts DC. So 32.4 volts, we're gonna write that down. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is just check our current. So move our meter back to DC. Sometimes you'll get a ghost reading on these without anything on it. And we are pulling 8.5 amps DC. So now we have all the calculations we need to determine the total load on this power supply. It's important to ensure that your system is operating under safe load conditions. Okay, so we measured 32.4 volts DC. You multiply this by the amps, so 8.5 amps DC. And this is the total load. This is the total power being consumed by our system. Power consumed is measured in watts. Power provided is volt amps, although it's the same calculation. Volts times amps equals watts. 275.4 watts is what we just measured this system as pulling. Now each one of these circuits is 600 volt amps. Now the safe operating load of any power supply, low voltage especially, is 85% of its total capacity. So a safe load is anything below 510 volt amps. So we are well below safe load for this system. And this is over a 500 linear foot system. and we're not even using a quarter of what this power supply can provide safely. I want to take a moment to say thank you to our friends at Gaston Fence in Charlotte, North Carolina, for allowing us to utilize their yard to demonstrate some of the capabilities of the cast perimeter system. If you'd like to check out the cast perimeter system in action, please don't hesitate to contact the folks at Gaston Fence for any of your fencing and now your security lighting needs.